Welcome to the First Universalist Church of Rochester, where we are called to nurture the spirit and serve the community. I am Trish Gallagher, she, her, and leading worship with me today are Jack Cunningham, he, him, who is providing tech support, Dr. Brock Chesfolt, he, him, and the UURoc choir bringing us our music. Jean Ott, she, her, and Ezekiel McGee, they, them, are serving as our online ministry team. Preaching for us this morning is Reverend Eileen Casey-Campbell, she, her, who is joining us from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua, New York. If you are here for the first time this morning, we especially welcome you. Thank you for making it to our worshiping community. We have a visitors form, which can be found in the chat for our folks online. And for those in the sanctuary, it can be accessed by scanning the QR code in your pews or on the back of your order of service. Please fill out the form so we can offer you a welcome beyond this worship service. Next Sunday is our church auction. Please check your order of service and email inbox for more details. Folks will be available during coffee hour after the service to answer auction questions. Before we take a moment to turn to our physical neighbors, let us take a moment to turn towards the camera to greet our online worshiping community. Please offer a wave. If you are online, feel free to pop into the chat to offer a greeting. And note to our online community, please wait to share joys and sorrows until later, so they'll be visible to those in the sanctuary at the appropriate time. For those here at the First Universalist Church, let us now take a moment to turn to our neighbors this morning and offer a greeting. Just to make it more fun, my boyfriend is a good Catholic. We got to convert him. And I can't sing, it'll make me cough. So I might lip sync, I might just stand here and lip sync. Step back from the mic. I can't sing that well anyway. Yeah, sometimes you hear, Lane has a good voice, so we hear loud and clear, which is nice. Patty and Kitty are still talking, so I figure we gotta let them finish. Okay, everybody, time to get back to the service. Hard to stop UUs from chatting, especially my tutors, like herding cats and more cats. Yep. Let us sing together hymn number 40, The Morning Hangs a Signal. Like so many terrible things in our world, the criminalization of the LGBTQI plus world probably started with religion. The Old Testament makes homosexuality punishable by death. Muslim law agrees. This position and the outrage against it pervades history. For example, in the 1830s poem, Don Leon, attributed to Lord Byron, the poet refers to a man hanging from the gallows and asserts that man's innocence to the judge. To understand the first line of this poem, it is useful to know that some judges once wore white ermine fur on their robes. Thou ermined judge, pull off that sabled cap, peep through the casement, see the gallows there? Thy work hands on it, could not mercy spare? He stopped no lonely traveler on the road. He burst no lock. He plundered no abode. He never wronged the orphan of his own. He stifled not the ravished maiden's groan. But thou didst sense thy constables to prowl and watch the prickling of his lust, to wring his neck and call thy doings just. Despite the decriminalization of homosexuality in the US and even the Pope's softening, many on the religious right have not given up their fight or their abuses. Thus, last May, the UN Secretary General felt compelled to issue a message saying in part, as we mark the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia, we face a stark fact. In every corner of the world, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex people continue to face violence, persecution, hate speech, injustice, and even outright murder. Meanwhile, retrograde laws continue to criminalize LGBTQI plus people around the world, punishing them for simply being who they are. Each such assault is an assault on human rights and the values we hold dear. We cannot and will not move backwards. I renew my call to all UN member states to uphold the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and end the criminalization of consensual same-sex relationships and of transgender people. Being yourself should never be a crime. Indeed, it's good to be a part of a church community where being yourself is just fine. As Connie Falk lights our chalice at First Universalist Church, and you light your chalice in your own homes, would you join me in saying our chalice words in unison? May we be a people of welcome, here to grow in heart and mind and spirit, and may we reach out to serve our community. Thank you. Please rise in body or in spirit and join me in our affirmation of faith, followed by our new song offering. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the source and meaning of life. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all. We are invited to sing our offering in today, a reminder of the abundance contained in this community, the abundance from which we give. You are invited to drop an offering in the offering basket or to give online by scanning the QR code in your pew. Folks online may click the link in the Zoom chat window to give to this important work. Thank you in advance for your generosity. Now today, and I think you can sit down, our doxology will be sung after our story and before joys and sorrows, so it's out of order in our order of service. We are trying something new. Our song is to introduce the offering, and it's a simple chant. What We Need Is Here by Amy McCreath. We will sing it a few times through as our choir makes their way forward for the offering anthem. What we need is What we need is here. What we need is here. What we need is here.
Be everyone. And now it's time for a story. This morning's story is by Michael Hall, and it's called Red, a Cran's Story. And you can see the pages a little more clearly on the screens above me if you can't see the book from where you sit. The story this morning, it goes like this. He was red, but he wasn't very good at it. Oh dear. His teacher thought he needed more practice. I'll draw a red strawberry, and then you draw a red strawberry. You can do this, really. But he couldn't, really. Like this? Oh my. Let's try again. His mother thought he needed to mix with other colors. Why don't you two go out and draw a nice round orange? A really big one. A really orange one. But they made a big greenish one. Yuck. Oops. His grandparents thought he wasn't warm enough. Your class is making self-portraits for Parents' Night. Wear this warm red scarf. It's so you. But it so wasn't. Oh dear. Everyone seemed to have something to say. Sometimes I wonder if he's really red at all. Don't be silly, it says red on his label. He came that way from the factory. Frankly, I don't think he's very bright. Well, I think he's lazy. Right, he's got to press harder. Really apply himself. Give him time, he'll catch on. Of course he will. But he didn't catch on. A green frog, a black sheep, a brown cow, a red, All the art supplies wanted to help. The masking tape thought he was broken inside. This will help hold you together. The scissors thought his label was too tight. One snip should do it. I thought he wasn't sharp enough. Stay still now. But even with all our help and all his hard work, he just couldn't get the hang of it. One day, he met a new friend. Will you make a blue ocean for my boat? I can't. I'm red. Will you try? So he did. Thank you. It's perfect. You're welcome. It was easy. And he didn't stop there. Bluebells, blue jeans, bluebird, blueberries, blue whale. I'm blue. He was blue. And everyone was talking. My son is brilliant. Who could have known he was blue? I always said he was blue. It was obvious. His blue ocean really lifted me. All his work makes me happy. His blue strawberries are my favorites. He's so intense. I'm going to make a green lizard with him, a really big one. I hear he's working on a huge new project. He's really reaching for the sky. And he really was. And this is the end of our story. Thank you for listening.
As we prepare our hearts for joys and sorrows, as well as for our prayer, please join us in singing our doxology. you into this reverent time of sharing the joys and sorrows of our gathered community. If you would like to, you can place your hand over your heart to better able to listen from this heart-centered place. As Patty Goodwin places stones into a bowl, I will read aloud the joys and sorrows of our gathered community. All online are also invited to share your joys and sorrows in the chat. A joy from the whole First Universalist Church. Last weekend, Michael Scott spent all of Saturday installing dimmer switches for our lighting here in the sanctuary. This was a major undertaking and will make holding both light and dark spaces possible here in this sacred space. Many thanks for your dedication to this building, Michael. A sorrow from Lily Garcia. Holding Janet Realbuto in prayer after the death of her son, Ryan. May she find comfort in her sorrow. Shirley Malone has a sorrow. Please send healing vibes to my daughter, Virginia, who fell last Sunday cross-country skiing and has a concussion. Jan Hickman also has a sorrow. Sadly, my son-in-law, Robert Best, is in the nursing home because his Parkinson's disease has worsened. I'm not sure if I could read any of the joys or sorrows on the screen. I don't see it, so maybe we don't have any joys and sorrows on the screen. So if we do and I missed them, I'm sorry, everybody, my apologies. And we drop one final stone into the bowl to represent all the joys and sorrows left unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. May all be held in the heart of love.
Let us take a deep breath in together. Spirit of life, be with us in all that we hold. And together we hold so much this morning. Gratitude and joy and celebration, right alongside grief and sorrow, for death and injury and illness. And we know that sometimes when we feel alone in our celebrations or in our sorrows, we come unmoored. Let us here in this space remember and remind each other that we can be a home for one another, for all the biggest feelings we hold in our hearts, that we can know while we are here in this community, while we are connected to this community through our screens, that in those biggest feelings we are with one another. So as we share in silence together, let us hold that promise in our heart, a promise to us, a promise to one another, that in all these biggest things, we are with you. Amen. Blessed be. May it be so. And as we turn our hearts toward our hymn of contemplation, filled with loving kindness, We begin our loving kindness meditation by singing to these parts of ourselves that are in need of some extra love today. Let us let our shoulders fall away from our ears as we take a moment to turn our thoughts towards someone we know, whom we care about deeply. You may bring their face into your mind's and your heart's eye. Surround them with your love. Hold them in your love as we sing. Perhaps your feet touch the floor and you find your rootedness to the earth as you bring your heart's attention to someone you know who is struggling. They could be someone who is sick, someone who is living with addiction, someone you know is suffering out loud or in the silent sanctuaries of their own heart. Bring this person's face into your mind and your heart as you sing to them. As you exhale, perhaps your eyes fall closed, and you bring to mind someone with whom you are in conflict, someone who it was hard to be in relationship with over the winter holidays, or someone with whom you are no longer speaking, or perhaps someone who is just really hard to live with or work with. Bring them into your mind and heart's eye. Bring their face to your mind as you sing to them. Let your soft belly expand with a big breath. And as you do from these people, we know we expand our hearts as well to those next to us in this room. We breathe in and we expand our love to hold our community in downtown Rochester. We breathe in and allow ourselves to hold in our minds all of this city, of our country, our state. Let our hearts expand to hold this country, to hold our neighboring countries, to hold Israel and Palestine, to hold all peoples facing war and oppression, and all peoples that continue to seek power and domination. Let us inhale and hold this earth and all its creatures, all human beings, all creatures of land and sea, all beings on this earth, as we sing. I'd like to start this morning with a reading of a poem that I wrote last summer after doing some work with UU colleagues who are working to shepherd trans people out of states in our country where it is not safe for them to live anymore. And the organization around that is purposefully vague for maybe obvious reasons. But if this is a project your congregation is interested in getting involved in, I would love to talk more specifically with you at any date in the future. The first sip of espresso hits the back of my tongue like the bitter herbs on the Seder plate, bitter water in the wilderness, dredging up the bitterness of so many ancestors scattered like seeds, calls up their panic from deep in my bones, the specter of nowhere safe, nowhere home. We sit in a circle and talk casually of how to shepherd trans passengers out of fascist regimes in this land that is all I know and in no way mine. We make plans and beg monies, and my ancestors who ran away and away and away are wailing somewhere inside, you too are nowhere safe, nowhere home. So clothed in the armor of blue lipstick, laughter, and each other, we go and dance until morning, move our bodies in a sea of queer joy, and sing out rage and heartbreak and wave after wave of fear. The promises we make to one another and to our ancestors in our singing and our dancing, in every gentle hand reaching out, turn the bitter water sweet. You are safe with me. My heart will be a home for yours. My 4-year-old's most recent book obsession is the widely beloved Frog and Toad series by Arnold Lobel. Are you familiar with Frog and Toad? I'm happy to hear it. So I've been thinking about him a lot, Arnold Lobel. It's not a widely known fact, but he came out as gay to his children, but he was never able to publicly come out before he died of AIDS-related complications in 1987. He knew what being publicly gay would have done to his career in children's literature in the 1970s while he was publishing Frog and Toad. His daughter said later in an interview that creating the now iconic amphibious pair was about as far out as he could come in his own time. And even though he kept his own sexuality private, the queerness he wove into the work left the world such a gift. He created an example for generations of children of the kind of quiet, gentle intimacy between two male characters that had not existed before, that challenged the way we depicted relationships between men. We can now look at Frog and Toad in the fullness of their legacy as queer role models, but even in his own time, this work gave the gift of an alternative imagining of the world to readers of any sexuality. Consider this, he offered children and the grown-ups reading to them. Here is a way for men to be that maybe no one has shown you. He gave these poignant and touching examples of a soft, tender, deeply caring masculinity that was not what heteronormativity had offered up. It's mostly still not what heteronormativity offers up, right? We've come a long way since the height of Arnold Lobel's career. A children's author probably doesn't risk their whole career by being openly gay these days. But they could have been fired in many states for being LGBTQ until the Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional 3 years ago, just 3 years ago. And even now, employment discrimination based on sexuality or gender is illegal, but discrimination in housing, education, healthcare, jury service, and credit are all still federally legal. Some state-by-state protections exist, but they are varied, and 18 states have no civil rights protections for LGBTQIA people at all. So many of us celebrated, danced in the streets even, when we finally won the right to marriage equality in 2015. I know I saw some of you out there. And then we hung up our hats in satisfaction. Job well done. Meanwhile, anti-queer movements have not stopped. They are increasing their mobilizing efforts. Over 300 bills have been put forth in 39 states and in Congress attacking LGBTQIA people just since last year, particularly targeting transgender youth. These bills are about enacting control over trans youth in ways like how they play, what they call themselves, whether they can continue living in their homes or with their parents, and if, when, and how they can see their doctors. And even when the bills fail, they are themselves messages of hate to trans people everywhere. Their very existence tells trans children in all our communities that they are nowhere safe, nowhere home. We are also watching a massive misinformation campaign about sexuality and gender, about what gender-affirming care or sexuality education look like. The book bans at schools and libraries, the censoring of curricula, the silencing of educators on sexuality or gender are because power requires a narrowing of our points of view. Many points of view, a multitude of sources of information, a diversity of perspectives, these are tools of freedom, and power has to eliminate those tools in order to exist. When we talk about these issues, especially if you're feeling overwhelmed or anxiety or despair at the magnitude of oppression, the first thing we need to do is see them as a matrix of embodied justice. We might be tempted to look at attacks on trans rights, queer rights, reproductive rights, access to healthcare, and so many other things as an overwhelming pile of oppressions, too large and too broad for us to have the capacity to focus on it. But these are all part of one coordinated attack on our embodied liberation, our autonomy over our own bodies. The overturn of Roe v. Wade is being used as a precedent for anti-trans healthcare policies in a number of states. In his concurrence with the overturn of Roe, Clarence Thomas specifically mentioned its possible implications for the case making marriage equality federally legal. It is a classic tactic of fascist movements to stoke the sexual anxiety of the people and to exert control over people's sexual health, sexual activity, and identities and their gender. This is what's happening in America in real time. The right-wing organizers who are using fascist tactics to strip away our bodily autonomy are conceiving of all of these areas as interrelated, and we should be too. The current anti-queer movement in the US is part of a larger movement of control over human bodies, and of particular importance to us in this space on a Sunday morning. It is a religious movement. Sam Ames from the Trevor Project put it this way: the religious right movement of power over bodies deemed unworthy has conflated control not just with strength, but with God. And as people of faith, they are doing this in our name. And I don't know about you, but that makes me so angry. I'm trying not to swear in other people's pulpits quite so much, so you just use your beautiful imaginations to consider the variety of words I have deleted from this sermon. I have restrained myself from using here when I say I am so angry. And I hope you're angry too. I hope you are properly agitated into what must be for us a call to action. We are called to action, and we have a gift in our midst, a blessing, a power. But what is the action? I know you'll ask, because you always do. And I, almost always, when I remember to email the office on time, have given it all away in the title of the service. What are we called to do? Be gay, do crime. Some of you are out here like, sign me up. I'm ready. And others, I can see, are, shall we say, a little more hesitant. So hear me out. Let's back it up. The word queer didn't come to have any association to sexuality until the 1920s or 30s, and then, and for many decades after, only in a derogatory way. Its origins as a word, though, go back to at least 1500 in Middle English, coming from the German for cross, or across, meaning lying against the main direction of a path or a road. It continued to describe anything outside the norm or off the expected path for centuries, and I think that's an important piece in our reclaiming of the word these last few decades. Humans have had all kinds of preferences for their intimate relationships with one another and all kinds of gender conceptions over the course of our history as a species and probably before, but we haven't always thought of those as part of identity as the way that we do now. In fact, the categories of identity we've grouped together as queer, that LGBTQIA plus alphabet soup, only belong together in that they all diverge from the path, from the norms laid out by our systems of power and control. Queerness is divergence, a crossing in the path of conformity. And sure, some people will be content to stay on the straight road, pun very much intended, but the mere presence of visible off-ramps is a blessing to us all. The phrase, be gay, do crime, has shown up as a slogan in LGBTQ activist efforts for at least a couple decades, maybe longer. And it speaks to the experience of queerness making one automatically an outlaw in a system that criminalizes it. It's a call for the dismantling of that system and an acknowledgement that the very existence of our queer identities already chips away at it. Queerness has always meant any identity that is a crossing of the norm, any honoring of the many crossings that live in our multitudinous selves. It is a transgression of the expected. Be gay, do crime means that if we are on the side of queer liberation, which is to say all liberation, civility cannot be our highest held value. In fact, incivility, along with a fair amount of outright civil disobedience, is necessary for liberation. In other words, if being gay is a crime, then let us all become criminals. Let us, gay or otherwise, commit whatever crimes against oppression are necessary to bring the entire system of bodily control to its knees. We can begin to see how queerness is not just a category of sexual or gender identity, it is a radical resistance to power. It is the stepping out from under the weight of a system that would control all our bodies. And queerness is therefore a blessing and a gift to us all, a part of our collective liberation. So you see, I'm not just being coy and funny when I say, even to my straight friends, if you're out there, be gayer. By which I mean, step out from under that weight with us. Receive the gift of freedom that queerness extends to absolutely everybody. Hear our queer theologian siblings like your very own minister saying we can be better than a binary faith, where we're stuck in the limiting and boring question of God, yes or no. Let their crossing of the expected path be an invitation into the depth of a more expansive faith, a chance to imagine without limits what divinity might mean for us. To imagine without limits who belongs in our pews, who belongs in our hearts. Last summer, I was at a karaoke event for queer UU ministers organized by your very own Lane May Reed. Do be proud. And I was showing off my rainbow-tipped acrylic nails because I like to be a little too much. And when I'm at UU events, I like to have a built-in percussion instrument for worship, a la St. Dolly Parton. Anyway, a colleague of ours was experiencing their first out-of-the-closet queer karaoke event and admired the nails, but said, I really love them, but I couldn't pull it off myself. It feels like lying somehow. And all I could think to do was quote RuPaul, who said, we're born naked, and everything else is just drag. Everything else is drag. On that note, in the interest of being gayer, would you take a moment with me to give our own genders some consideration? Just right here, smack dab in the middle of a church service, let's take a pause. Let's take ourselves a deep breath. Listen to the part of you that knows itself best. And these are inside questions, so I encourage you to answer them inside your own minds. What are the gender expectations of me? In other words, what is expected of me based on my gender? And am I meeting those expectations? Do I want to be? What do I have in common with other people who share my gender? Does anyone ever misgender me? And how does it feel when they do? And finally, how would I describe my gender without using binary gendered words like woman or man, boy or girl, masculine or feminine? What words would I use? Friends, let us look at queer creators like Arnold Lobel, who have given us the gift of a different path, laid crosswise to the one we were set on. Because even for the straight cisgender children among us, Frog and Toad offers the framework for a different way of occupying one's gender. Its particular queerness says to its readers of every sexuality, being a boy doesn't have to look the way everyone told you it should. So let us receive the gift of that little notion, smashing wide open the restrictive boxes we have been put in by systems of control. Queerness takes off our blinders. It offers us all the invitation to move away from the narrow path we are set on to create new ones. And this is exactly why queerness is so dangerous to high control systems. Any path moving crossways from the narrow path of control is a threat to that system, to the system that has offered to trade us security for staying in line. Anyone who steps outside the umbrella of control and finds freedom there, finds joy, opens the gates of liberation for the rest of us. That is the gay agenda, and the right-wing fascists who have tried to mobilize God themselves against all our bodies should be afraid of it. So in this struggle, let us look around for the gift, for the power of so much queer joy overflowing in spite of a world that would see us nowhere safe, nowhere at home. And receive the blessing of knowing that the well springs of our own joy reside deep within us, belong to no one else, and cannot be destroyed by hate or violence or even our own despair. Hear our queer siblings saying they have made our very being a crime, and being on our side means becoming criminals too. Receive the blessing of the vision of a world where everyone's body is holy and whole, worthy and graced with agency. Because a system that wills your siblings out of existence will do the same to you eventually. And in a system that would will us not to exist, we can become accomplices to oppression, or we can become criminals. I say with a heart full of queer joy and not a stitch of irony, choose crime, my friends. May we all be bold enough. Amen. And I invite you to rise in your body or your spirit, but first, I invite you into a moment of not crime per se in the legal sense, but it maybe feels a little wrong. If you have a pen or a pencil, or your neighbor does, and you want to turn to number 170 in our hymnal, We Are a Gentle, Angry People. Knowing that the author of this song has encouraged this particular not quite a crime, we can change the phrase gay and straight together to queer and straight together, which is how we're going to sing it. And if you're not up for the tiny crime of defacement this morning, that's okay. We'll just remember it and sing it that way. It is in the slides that way. Please remain standing as we extinguish our chalice flame this morning. Let us read together the words printed on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. And I offer as a benediction these words from the incomparable Arnold Lobel. True joy is worth every step of a hard road. May it be so. Now, as we close our service this morning, I invite you to place a hand over your heart. If you are joining us online, I invite you to turn your settings to gallery view and look upon the faces that are here with you. For those of us in the room, take a moment to look around the room at those here with us today. And let the people of the church say amen. Amen.
If your heart always did what a normal heart should do, if you always play a part instead of being who you really are, then you might just miss the ones who are standing there. So instead of passing by, show them that you care. Instead of asking why me, and why you, why not we too? 'Cause love don't need a reason. Love don't always rhyme. And if love is all we have for now, we've got to make the time. If we always believe all the madness that we're taught, never questioning the rules, then we're living lies we bought so long ago. And how are they to know it's not what's wrong or right? It's just another way. And I don't want to fight. So no, I'm going to stay with you till the end, with you, my friend. friends, 'cause love don't need a reason. Love don't always rhyme. And if love is all we have for now, we've got to take the time. I'll hold you close, time can't tear us apart. Forever I will stand by you. We've got to start with the beat of our hearts. Together we will see this through, 'cause love don't need a reason. Love's never a crime. And if love is all we have for now, we've got to take the time.